This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 463 of the Yellow Wall Pod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund winning 3-0 in Darmstadt to close out the Hinrunde. Jadon Sancho and Marco Reus linking up again. Ian Maatsen making his debut as a left back. Gregor Kobel being our primary playmaker. Fitness concerns about Niklas Süle. Gio Reyna being determined to leave BVB in this winter. And Saturday's game against 1. FC Köln. For all that and more, join me, Matthias Zug. Hello, Matthias. How are you doing?
I am doing okay. Stefan, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Also here, Lars Pollmann. Hello, Lars. Good to have you back. How are you?
Hello, Stefan. Thanks for having me again. I'm looking out of my window and it's a regular winter wonderland. So me being inclined to, I guess, bad weather, some people would say, I'm quite content with this.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are you someone that likes the snow or not? Because I feel like the older I get, the less I like it. I'm becoming more and more of a curmudgeon. So I'm glad you at least get some joy out of it, because I just had to clean the snow and ice off our car, and it was not fun. So
well, the point is that we barely ever get snow here in the Rhineland. So every once in a couple of years or so, we have a couple of snow days. So they are quite enjoyable, actually.
Yeah. Well, enjoy yourself, Matthias. You being in Colorado, I know you have much more of this weird white stuff falling from the sky. In Philadelphia, it was also the first snow, I think, in 2 years, thanks to climate change. Matthias, how do you like snow?
Oh, I enjoy the Colorado snow. When I lived outside of Philadelphia, I hated it because the power always went out. Whereas here in 12 years, the power never goes out when it snows. And it's much nicer snow. It's the nice powder stuff.
Well, that is good for you. Do you ski then? Is this a thing?
I used to, but I decided I'd rather walk. So we're not skiing anymore.
All right, I'm going to quit stalling now. We do have to talk about the 3-0 win in Darmstadt, which had very enjoyable moments, but also some moments that do raise some eyebrows here and there. But I think why not start with the most positive one? At least for me personal, Jadon Sancho and Marco Reus linking up again was a bit of a cleanser for my soul personally. I just thought in that particular moment everything was right with the world. Obviously you have to wait and see if it was an offside or not. But when Dortmund made it 2-0 finally, and you see old friends link up again like this. It did warm my heart. Matthias, were you also emotional when when that occurred?
I don't tend to get that emotional anymore with the cynical world of professional football. However, that was really nice to see. It was joyous. You could really see the joy on both of their faces. And obviously the cameras focused a lot on Marco Reus in that second. And you could just see that was true joy. Beyond just the joy of scoring a goal, it was just joy. And that was indeed very nice to see on a cold, windy night in Darmstadt. So that was great. And then, we'll talk about the rest of the match, but no, that was nice to see.
Yeah, Lars, maybe since you haven't been on in a couple of weeks, how do you see the Sancho signing, him returning? Obviously, in the videos that Borussia Dortmund posted, you could see him being also very focused on Marco Reus in the beginning, asking where he's sitting in the locker room, etc., since I guess this is the closest friend he had while being at Dortmund, or that is still here at least. But overall, what do you make of this impromptu signing?
well, I don't know how much of an impromptu signing it actually was, because I think we've all heard rumors and rumblings about Sancho's returning quite a few months in advance. I think there was already a bit of a topic in the summer. Obviously, that didn't come off because I suppose they were more happy with their squad planning than they are right now after the first half of the season. Correctly so, because quite obviously they've been playing disappointingly in 2 out of the 3 competitions, which isn't good enough. I tend to think, regardless of whether or not he stays in the summer, and obviously it seems reasonably unlikely just because of the financial terms that are going to be asked of Dortmund, both in terms of a signing fee and wages, and a transfer fee, not a signing fee. Regardless of that, I think it's a very good idea to add a player you know very well, works in the league, knows, and works at your club, for what is a fairly low financial outlay. I think in terms of the risk reward kind of thinking, I struggle to find whom else Dortmund could have signed for these 5 months, as it were, who could have a higher impact on their second half of the season for what they are paying him. Because today it's been reported by Sportbild that they are covering a third of his wages for the rest of the season. Man United also covering a third, and him foregoing 2.5 million euros for the rest of the season. There's a, I suppose, nominal loan fee that's being sent to United, but ultimately, if that comes out to, let's say, an investment of 5.5 or 6 million, I bet you can't tell me a single player they could have signed on a long-term deal with those kind of terms who would have even close to the impact that Sancho can have. Now, obviously, the question is he going to have that impact? But I think the 30-odd minute cameo against Darmstadt already gave us a few hints in that regard, because, quite frankly, most people were wondering how he's going to look after 4 months of suspension at Man United, not being able to train even with the first team there. And I think he looked sprightly, quite lean, maybe a couple of kilos away from his best fighting weight, if you like. But I think this was a very encouraging performance in all aspects. And obviously the thing that comes to the fore the most with Sancho is just the joy. I think you can tell whether it's him speaking to the media, speaking to club media, or even, when he's getting subbed on, when he's assisting the goal for Reus, there's just a huge smile on his face. And I think he's the kind of player that needs a certain type of atmosphere around him to succeed, and Dortmund is quite clearly the place for that. And so I'm quite positive that it's going to work out very well. And ultimately, if it's a 6-month or 5-month cameo back at Dortmund and he gets them back into the Champions League, then everyone can part ways in the summer and congratulate each other on a job well done.
Yeah, when the Bundesliga conducted the post-match interview, which we got to see on ESPN, he was asked about his personal goals, and he said why he is not going to reveal his true personal goals, which maybe are participating in the Euros, or I don't know, just getting out the mud. He basically said that for now it's just being happy again, and I feel like that really shows a lot of insight. And yeah, he was very involved when he came on. I think he had one of the highest averages in touches in the stint he did play. And overall, you can see that he is not well versed with Edin Terzic's system yet, because he made just a lot of positive runs and didn't get the memo yet that we don't do that here. But all kidding aside, I think you can immediately see his influence on the game, and the way the opposition respects him now. Obviously, it was also I guess a bit advantageous for him that Darmstadt at that time were already fairly fatigued. But that being said, it is very exciting to have him back, because it seems like he will make the difference here and there for the Black and Yellows, and that's exactly why they brought him back. So as far as first impressions go, that was pretty good, and I feel like that's the perfect segue to the left back signing from FC Chelsea. Also on loan, Ian Maatsen. Matthias Zug impressed me quite a bit as well. What were your first impressions?
Oh, for sure. He looked calm on the ball, able to move under pressure in tight spaces, way more comfortably than most other left backs we've had, aside from Guerreiro, but I'm talking about this season. But with that, you get pace. You could see that. He also hustled back, which, as everyone knows, has always been one of my biggest issues with Guerreiro in the past, is brilliant and all the attacking aspects. When it comes to defensive, that was really his major weak point, which isn't good when you are a left back defender. And Maatsen showed also, right off the bat that he is doing it well. I mean, yeah, kind of like you mentioned with Sancho, there were a few moments of, let's call it, automatisms not being there yet, but these, he was there for 12 hours, maybe, since he was announced, and got to play, and I thought did really, really well. When Julian Riasson comes back, I'll be honest, I just want, based on this performance, you've got Riasson on the right and Maatsen on the left, even though I have to say Thomas Meunier also had a pretty decent game. I can't really think of many bonehead moments there. I'm like, oh no, I just wasn't really concerned about fullbacks, which was really nice for 90 minutes.
Yeah, it was nice, at least in that regard. I think Lassie tweeted that it's very important to have a fullback that's comfortable in tight spaces if you don't have any build-up play otherwise. Yeah, it was interesting to see how attacking-minded he is, so what kind of runs he made. It was sad to see that Daniel Malen in particular, who teamed up with him on the left side, didn't quite find him quickly enough. Because he stepped on the ball too often instead of playing it quickly, but maybe there's some chemistry to be built. Who knows? But definitely interesting to see someone making such positives runs. And obviously in the 20th minute, Dortmund did create their first chance with Ian Maatsen breaking through on the left side and then having this cross to Julian Brandt, where maybe if he headed the ball instead of trying to shoot with his right foot, he might have had a higher chance of converting, but I honestly don't know. But yeah, to me, very positive. Lars, how did you see his first performance? And then maybe in a wider range, we can also pivot to Dortmund's build-up play otherwise.
I think you can't but be hugely impressed by what he did, as Matthias alluded to, basically a day before being announced. Obviously, he trained with the team a bit before then because there were some formalities to be concluded with Chelsea. I think there were a couple of signatures missing, but the transfer or the loan transfer was never really in question or in doubt. Given that he's barely had any time to get to know his teammates, I'm sure he hasn't spoken to all of them individually just yet, because it's just the nature of having a 30-odd man squad. You don't spend much time with everyone. Given all those circumstances, you have to be impressed with what he did. And I think it's quite apparent why they were interested in him a couple of times before already. I think he's basically the replacement of Guerreiro with some differences in his profile. I think he's definitely more athletic, which, I mean, it's hard to be less athletic than Guerreiro while still being a very good player in this day and age. He's probably a bit less technical because, quite frankly, Guerreiro is a ridiculous technician on the ball. But, I think the added athleticism is quite important because, as Matthias also alluded to, Guerreiro never really cared much about defending. I don't know that Maatsen necessarily has great defensive instincts himself, but just by virtue of being a great athlete, that's oftentimes enough as a fullback to get by defensively. I think someone like Alphonso Davies at Bayern kind of showed that, especially early on. He wasn't, because he was a converted winger, basically. He didn't have great defensive instincts, but when you can run everyone down in sprinting duels and have a pretty compact body build, even though Martin is quite short, he's still compact and quite muscular, so he's not going to be pushed off the ball too easily. Obviously, you don't want him to, get involved in aerial duels or whatever, but that's basically the same for every short fullback, which Dortmund are quite used to, obviously, because of Guerrero and to an extent also because of Morey, and Marius Wolf isn't great in the air either, so that's all not a big issue. And I think the biggest bonus, especially compared to Benzebaini, who's often involved in build-up, but it's just not one of his strong suits, is the forward-mindedness of Madsen. His first touch is always judged to go forward. He's always thinking about moving forward. You can tell that he's played extensively on the wing for Burnley, for example, where he was quite instrumental in their promotion to the Premier League, playing oftentimes in a more advanced role. And quite frankly, as you alluded to, us moving into discussion of their build-up issues, having someone who's always open and willing to receive a ball and progress the ball, it's not something Dortmund have an abundance of. Given who's usually playing in central midfield, there's always, or not always, but the most popular move in Dortmund's build-up is lateral, and I think Martin is a vertical player, and that's something that will stand them in good stead going forward. And I'm especially looking forward to the occasions where Martin and Sancho will combine on the left wing, which I think we will see soon enough.
Yeah. I mean, after this winter break, I was really impressed with the transformation of the team and how well they played in terms of ball circulation and what a flow of the game. I think in the first half there was even like a 3-minute stint of ball possession where they were nearly unfazed by the opposition, and that was really nice to see, especially contrasted with how the team looked in the past, where they basically just hoofed it long. But unfortunately, the team I'm talking about right now is Darmstadt, and they are, if you look at the table, the worst team in the league. Meanwhile, Dortmund, ball progression, ball circulation, all these things, not so much a theme. I think the most prominent point of discussion on the internet that I saw is that when Dortmund had a goal kick, that Gregor Kobel just moved the ball up a few yards and then repetitively, I would say, tried to find Niklas Füllkrug. If I remember correctly, there was one successful play coming out of this, which resulted in a snapshot by Daniel Mahlen. But other than that, not a very efficient way to start. Now, obviously, Matthias, it was already interesting to see Emre Can playing center back with Hummels having the flu instead of Niklas Süle, which meant we had Can, Özcan, and if you will, maybe Sabitzer triangle in midfield, and of course Julian Brandt also involved in the build-up play. To me, the lack of creativity right there is actually quite jarring, and when we talk about Gio Reyna later, and the fact that he is not included more in this process, is to me bit of an indictment on the black and yellows. But overall, I think while it was nice to come away with a 3-0 win, I think maybe even the highest of the season, I thought it was very disappointing the way Dortmund did play. Obviously, you can't expect a massive transformation, but nevertheless, they did have a bit of an off season, and I was left very disappointed by the way Dortmund played on the ball. What did you make of how Dortmund moved the ball around or not moved the ball around?
It's a really weird match because you win 3-1. XG looked good, 3.1 for Dortmund. Darmstadt underperformed their XG of 1.0. The only difference is that 3.1 came with 8 shots on target versus the 1.0 came with 2 shots on target. Gregor Kobel only had to make 2 saves, but one of them was a world-class last-ditch need to make, but, that's why you have Gregor Kobel. It's weird because, Dortmund, during the course of the match, only had 50-odd more touches than Darmstadt, only played 50 more passes than Darmstadt, and 52% possession only, and those are statistics that, can tell one of 2 stories. It could tell the story that, Darmstadt actually set up well. I thought Thorsten Lieberknecht did a good job in just basically, everyone could see it. They man-marked the entire back 4 of Dortmund, sat then largely on Zaliotchan in that 6th position, and let Kobel just walk up the pitch and hoof it somewhere. And did a great job in limiting any opportunity of a build-up play for Dortmund, which was the moment you take someone out like Mats Hummels, you already lose a lot of that anyway. But that was really weird. It was interesting to watch. Darmstadt, I think, had a very good tactical plan that almost paid off, but that's kind of been their story in a few matches this season. I want to say against Bayern, they had a good tactical approach until they got a red card and it all kind of fell apart then really quickly. And against Dortmund, they had a good tactical plan. And then, as you had mentioned before, they got tired. And then you bring on someone like Jadon Sancho and Youssoufa Moukoko, whose goal was absolutely brilliant. And they just don't have the quality to then play with you. But I would say until that 55th minute, until you saw Reus and Sancho come on, it was tough. I mean, the German word zäh, which basically means tough, but in a different way, it just kind of underlines it. It was okay. It wasn't great. I wouldn't say it wasn't good. It was average. And the bench, the depth of the bench, the quality of the bench really made the difference for Dortmund. But you'd like to have seen more of that sooner. I know you mentioned Zavitsa. I actually thought he didn't play badly. I thought he had a pretty good game overall. And Reus coming on and Sancho coming on made a big difference in the pace of the way Dortmund played and the way they held possession a little bit better. And just the drive towards goal was significantly better from that moment on. And that does leave me with a few question marks, because before that, most of the impetus, I felt, came over someone like Ian Maatsen. And that's a problem when someone who's been there for like 5 minutes is one of your key catalysts to get the ball forward in dangerous positions.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. It's not great. Obviously, you talk about the individual class, and I mean, if we look at the first goal that Dortmund did score, Jamie Bino Gittens on a counterattack does 2 to 3 defenders, however you want to call it. And great pass by him to Julian Brandt and a nice run by Malen to draw a defender away from Brandt. So he had this one-on-one matchup, and then I think didn't hit it perfectly the way he wanted, but just still well enough for the ball then to beat the goalkeeper and roll into the net. But until then, like I said, Dortmund did not really create much, did not really dominate the game like the way you would expect a team against Darmstadt to dominate that game. Lars, while we are all airing our grievances, I'm sure you two have a lot of those. Watching this game, I know it's a win, but I feel like having a more of a long-term view, it did not feel encouraging.
No, it didn't. I think there are obviously always some mitigating circumstances you can put out there. I think watching a lot of these games over the weekend in the Bundesliga, you could tell that they had a 3-week winter break. A lot of teams looking quite rusty. Leverkusen didn't really look like the Leverkusen we've come to know this season, for example. Leipzig had, I think, 26 shots or so against Frankfurt, but only 2 or 3 really good ones, and subsequently lost at home. Actually, I thought of the teams that I watched, Stuttgart were probably the best side, and they were beaten at the end rather soundly 3-1 by Gladbach. So I think we have to take that into account, but obviously we know that this isn't a one-time thing for Dortmund. These problems have permeated throughout the season, and I don't really see a reason why things would suddenly get so much better. I mean, while they had a 3-week winter break, that's 3 weeks without a game, but it's not 3 weeks of intensive training sessions. Ultimately, I think the only real sessions that count were probably held in Malaga or Marbella, rather, in the summer training camp, and I think those were like 6 or 7 units of practice. So I think it's quite stupid to expect things to miraculously change because you signed Nuri Sahin and Sven Bender as new assistant coaches. Obviously, they ought to have an impact eventually, but that stuff takes time. So they haven't changed materially the players that are responsible for the build-up, which I think we can safely assume now is the biggest issue, because once they're in the final third, they have so much quality that enough goals will come, even though they don't really trounce opponents this season. But that was the case as well last year, and then in the second half of the season they turned it up and scored a lot of goals. So that might still happen as well this season, but it's still a problematic position what they have in front of the fence. I think they are kind of crying out for Mecha to come back, which is an indictment in itself, because Mecha wasn't particularly good in the first half of the season, but at least the type of player he is, they are definitely missing. So I think it's going to still be a struggle sometimes. And as you said, Stefan, Darmstadt were better on the ball in the first half of the season, in the first half of this game rather. And the only difference until the halftime and maybe until Darmstadt's legs gave away a bit was that one moment of individual brilliance by Bino Gittens. I think if Füllkrug made better decisions, they might have scored a second one, because once he took too long to take a shot, and then I think in the second half already he shot himself when he could have released, might have been Bino Gittens, might have been Malen on the right, who would have been clear on goal. So it's not like necessarily the win was in huge danger, but that wasn't, I would say, down to Dortmund's brilliance or anything, or their great defending, even though, for example, Schlotterbeck had a very solid game in defense, but mostly because Darmstadt is probably the weakest opponent Dortmund will face the entire second half of the season. So I suppose it's good that Darmstadt is the one team they faced twice in 2024, or before the summer break.
Yeah, that is for sure. I am glad about that fact too, especially that the next time they see each other, it'll be in Dortmund, which I guess will be another advantage. I hope by then Dortmund have nothing to play for in a good way, meaning that they will already have their Champions League qualification wrapped up. I do want to talk a little bit about Gio Reyna, because I do feel like that he could alleviate some of Dortmund's ailments in the build-up play. But for that to happen, the fittest ever Gio Reyna, at least according to Edin Terzic, and the fitness values that were shown in the during the fitness tests. He needs to play, obviously, but right now he is not really playing. He had a very late cameo and got a yellow card for kicking the ball away when it was already out of play in frustration. And I feel like that frustration is also materializing its way to pushing for a transfer away from Dortmund to reignite his career. And who can blame him, considering that's the way he is being utilized in Dortmund right now, which is not really at all. And if the reports are true and Dortmund let him go for 15 million, I'd be rather miffed, because that is a lot of money wasted in my view. Gio Reyna is a much better player and should, at least in my book, leave for a much higher transfer fee. But in order to achieve that, he needs to be a regular and play much better, obviously, which he does not really have a chance to showcase. I, of course, also don't know how and what he's showing in training. Maybe him playing from the beginning isn't warranted. But Matthias, I feel like he could be maybe a solution, especially against opponents like Darmstadt, to play him instead of maybe a Sabitzer, even though you said Sabitzer had an okay game, but I do think that Gio Reyna has capabilities in his passing that Sabitzer just doesn't have. And also him linking up with Brandt, I think there can be a lot of positive football coming out of that. So what do you make out of this situation and the reports swirling around currently?
Well, I mean, you and I talked about Gio Reyna last week, and you know my opinion, and I do not have a very high opinion of Gio Reyna. Not because of talent or potential, because you said a lot of cans and coulds and maybes, and that is Gio Reyna right now in a nutshell for the last 12 plus months is maybes, cans, and could be's. You know, he had some injury issues in the past. Those seem to be gone. If he's as fit as he's ever been, good for him. Don't wish anyone to be injured. But then there's a bigger issue behind it. The yellow card, I remember I was watching it with my eldest son, and I went, well, that's stupid. And I'm not surprised. It's just my personal opinion of Gio Reyna by
when that happened, I was just imagining you sitting there with your arms crossed saying exactly like I've been saying.
Yes. A petulant, spoiled brat. And that is how he comes across far too often. And you can't have that. Does he have more technical ability in one foot than Masa Zabitsa has in both? Yeah, I don't even deny that. Does he have the same work rate as Masa Zabitsa? No, he does not. There's no proof in that. And there was also a moment there where, Jadon Sancho was just so wide open. And Gio Reyna didn't play him the ball. He had the ball in the perfect position and didn't play it. And there's no way he couldn't have seen him. There is no way. And he just held the ball too long, made the wrong decision, and poof, that opportunity was gone. Whereas Jadon Sancho was in a perfect position to go in on goal, and he didn't do it. And that is your job as a playmaker. And those are kind of the types of moments where if you want to start, if you want to warrant playing more, you have to take those opportunities to do it. And yeah, there are obviously issues in training. There are obviously issues off the pitch, attitude issues. Otherwise, he would be playing. He's an asset when everything is right. When things aren't right, he's a liability, in my opinion, because he won't press properly, he won't position properly, he won't run back properly, he won't work properly. And that in a midfield position where we know Dortmund can have and has had issues in retaining possession and it breaking down there in transition going forward and then leaving the back line wrong-footed and flat-footed, I just see that as a risk. And a risk that obviously Edin Terzic and the coaches at Dortmund for a longer time have also seen as a risk and therefore don't trust the player. And I think if the coaches don't trust him, then yeah, he should go somewhere else. And I hope he goes somewhere else, reinvigorates his career, actually gets it going properly, let's be honest, because he's still really young. It's not quite the situation as Jadon Sancho in that regards. Would I consider a loan deal and see if he can do something for half a season somewhere and then reevaluate? I think that would be probably more prudent right now rather than letting him go for 15 or 20 million. I agree with you that that's given his potential undervalue. But I can understand him wanting to go and his agents pushing for it, his team. That has been a problem, in my opinion, given his his issues with Greg Berhalter. So yeah, he could be a great asset. Is he an answer for Dortmund's woes? No. I'm sorry, USA fanboys out there about Gio Reyna, who constantly tweet at me that he's the solution to Dortmund's problems, and he's not. It goes beyond that. Can he help solve those? Yes. But then that has to come from him, and don't get a yellow card for kicking a ball away because you're frustrated that you couldn't retain possession on the sideline, and keep your head up a little bit more for looking for the right pass, and then things will be fine.
Yeah, that's what do you think Dortmund should do in the whole Girona situation? Do you think that selling him now for about 50 million would be wise?
I don't. I don't know what they need the money for right now. I mean, balancing the books or whatever, because they're definitely not signing another attacking-minded player after getting Sancho. So I don't know what selling Reyna in the winter would do for them. Obviously, it's quite apparent that both his father, Claudio, and his new agent, Jorge Mendes, are pushing for a deal right now. I mean, whenever a high-profile player switches agencies during a season or right ahead of a transfer window, I think the writing is basically on the wall, and there's so many reports, ESPN, a lot of German outlets, even local media from interested clubs about possible destinations for him, that there's quite obviously something there, and there might be a situation where Dortmund need to make a decision. If I were asked to make that decision, I would probably go for a loan deal until the summer. Maybe you can find its footing somewhere. But obviously no particularly good club takes a player for 5 months, unless he's, a great market opportunity. So, for example, Sancho for Dortmund, because they know what he can do. And if he can come close to his ceiling, then he's someone that improves Dortmund tremendously. And I don't necessarily see Reyna as that kind of player just yet, because he's 21 and has lost quite a bit of momentum in his young career due to injuries, and now not really playing much for Dortmund. So I don't know that necessarily there's going to be the perfect loan opportunity. And seeing as his contract is running out in 2025, a transfer in the summer would then be the obvious one if nothing happens in the winter, just because I don't really see how, going from the situation as it currently presents itself, we would come to a situation where Reyna and his team would be comfortable signing a contract extension at Dortmund, and obviously they don't want to lose somewhat highly rated players on free transfers. So the one thing I'm struggling with is that it seems reasonable to assume that Dortmund are not going to retain Marco Reus in the summer. That's just the vibe we are getting in from German media and all that. And then obviously one of the problems that Reyna has right now, that both Brandt and Reus are in front of him in the pecking order, and he has to be shipped out to the wing and all that stuff, that kind of goes away. And if you've sold Reyna in the winter for, I agree, a below his genuine market evaluation, and then Reus leaves in the summer and you have to sign a new central attacking midfielder, why did you let go of someone who's clearly talented, who I think is a better footballer than Christian Pulisic, for example, who went to Chelsea for 64 million? At least in theory, I think he's better. So that's the thing I'm struggling with to reconcile the prospect of Reus leaving or maybe ending his career, and then not having Reyna, to step in. I think that would be the opposite of good squad planning. But quite frankly, Dortmund have made quite a few decisions that turn out to be head scratchers, and some of them even from the start. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they caved in to the demands of the player side, which again quite clearly point to him leaving in the next 2 weeks, I think, because the transfer window in most big European leagues closes on February the 1st.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't think that selling Gio Reyna right now, pretty much as low as it gets, helps Dortmund in any case. I do remember Sebastian Kehl saying or indicating to the media that sort of Gio Reyna is being viewed as a successor to Marco Reus eventually. But obviously, none of us know the exact timeline for that. But that being said, I do hope that there's a way for him to make himself more valuable for Dortmund to at least sell him in the summer. Because I assume the way injury luck goes in Dortmund, that there might be a chance for him to play more here and there. But obviously not what I want right now for him to play this way. I feel like he could also play himself into the squad more on merit, but as Matthias said, that needs to come from him. It's also interesting to read the reports that Dortmund are maybe not going to extend Marco Reus's contract, and then I think someone read something of him going to Gladbach then, or something like that, and Dortmund fans getting very frustrated and upset that of the idea of Marco Reus not ending his career with Borussia Dortmund, not because Reus is going elsewhere, but rather Dortmund not extending him. But I had this discussion yesterday with my wife, and I do feel like maybe from a financial standpoint, it does make sense for Dortmund not to extend him, because he does earn a lot of money and his output isn't quite as where it used to be. But that all being said, he is not drawing absolutely ridiculous wages, and I still think he is good enough. So I think I would extend with Marco Reus for another year, as I would do with Mats Hummels, obviously. So there's that. But in the meantime, let's talk about another defender. Niklas Süle has been also in the headlines for not being fit enough, according to the coaching staff. Matthias, Niklas Süle, obviously, as a very big guy, is someone who has to often battle with conditioning and whatnot. I don't know if you watch NBA, but tall players often have issues with conditioning much more than smaller players, just because of the way it works. Niklas Süle, of course, has a reputation for that. Do you think Terzic not playing him until the very end of the game did send the right message to him, and Dortmund fans can expect that he will be in better shape soon enough? And do you think this is a big issue for the Black and Yellows, or is this just something where media makes more out of it than it really is?
Man, I've got a lot of yeses and a couple of nos in there. Yes, it's the right message, because they needed some defensive cover in that moment. He's obviously your best choice in that moment. But starting Emre Can over him, who is undoubtedly fit. I mean, we can all have our criticism of Emre Can. Fitness, pace, and work rate are not his weaknesses by far. And Süle, he's a big frame dude, and that comes with those issues. You could kind of see it. He's a bigger kid. And so kid, I mean, he's not even that young anymore. I guess he is for me. But whether or not the message goes through to him, it seems it is. Will that make a difference? I don't know. I'm not Niklas Süle. That's a question only he can answer. Do I think the media is making more out of this than it is? Yeah. But I hate to say it, that's the media's job to a degree, to find these little things and ask questions and then pose headlines that are, maybe not quite as big as they'd like to make it out to be. It's a fitness thing. Get your fitness in order, and Niklas Süle will then be playing because he's a very good central defender. But if there's a fitness concern, especially if you're worried about counterattacks and things like that, then Emre Can is your better choice athletically, as well as Schlotterbeck athletically. And that is an area that Süle then has to work on, who is surprisingly quick. I mean, he's played plenty of matches at right back and done surprisingly well. But you need to work on it a little bit more when you're a little bit bigger.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I had to chuckle when Tesic said why Emre Can was picked over Niklas Süle, that one of the aspects why Emre Can got the nod was pace, because I do think that Niklas Süle is actually faster than Emre Can, but that just...
It's deceptive. That's the thing. With Can, you can see him running really fast. With Süle, every time he plays right back, I'm always surprised at the pace, probably because you're looking at a different frame.
Yeah. Well, Lars, what can we expect now from Dortmund this weekend in Cologne? We have played the bottom team, now the second to last team in 1. FC Köln, who are going to a world of struggles, have somehow managed to get themselves a transfer ban. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that whole story or not, but they have also changed coaches. A lot of turmoil at 1. FC Köln. Also not really playing any good football. If I remember correctly, Dortmund beat them 1-0 early in the season. Obviously, since it was the first game, and were really riding their luck to get even 3 points out of that game. So, at least on paper, Dortmund should go to the Rhein-Energie-Stadion or whatever the heck it's called and come away with 3 points. But how are those prospects?
Maybe talk about the transfer ban just for a second, because it's quite a dumb story in a way, because the transfer ban has been instituted because they signed a 16-year-old kid from Slovenia who I think was with them during the winter break, but hasn't featured obviously for the first team just yet. The punishment came because for the regulatory boards and all that stuff, it was proven beyond reasonable doubt that they made the kid break his contract at his home club. So whenever you can get a transfer ban because you're signing a teenager to play in your academy, go for it, obviously. Quite a dumb story, and also I think if we wanted to talk about it at length, I guess you could make the case that bigger clubs, let's say Manchester City, would not have gotten a transfer ban over this stuff, because quite possibly they just would have paid the kids club 5 million euros in terms of hush money, and obviously Cologne don't have that kind of money. So the transfer ban really coming in clutch for I guess everyone in the bottom half of the Bundesliga, and maybe even Dortmund this weekend, because not only is there a transfer ban and have they let go of Steffen Baumgart, who was kind of synonymous with Cologne for the last 2.5 years, but now they are also in a deep injury crisis because Davy Selke, their best goal scorer, I think he's got 5 goals, which doesn't sound like much, but it's the same that Niklas Füllkrug has, for example.
Also doesn't sound like much.
Yeah, and I don't know, if 5 goals after half a season for a club that's struggling against relegation, that comes up to 10 goals at the end of the season. That's not a terrible output. Not great, but not terrible. But he's injured for a few weeks. Luca Waldschmidt is injured. Mark Uth is injured. So the 3 best, if we can say that, or the potentially best or the three most important, or however you want to call it, attacking players.
Lars, you're meaning to tell me that Stefan Tigges is not their main source for goal scoring?
No, he's not. Well, obviously, that might change against Dortmund because I seem to recall that he did quite well whenever he's played against his former club. At least he did last season. I don't know if he even played in both meetings. I think he missed the first game of this season because of injury, but I mean, Cologne is the local club where I live because here in the Rhineland, there's Cologne, there's Gladbach, there's Leverkusen, but Cologne is really the local and the biggest club, obviously, of those three, historically speaking. And you could, the last few weeks, it's felt like the sky is falling for a lot of people because of the transfer ban, because of Baumgart leaving. His replacement, Timo Schulz, for a lot of people, not the most inspired choice. He's new to the Bundesliga after failing to get promoted with St. Pauli. He was then sacked because of lack of development at a second division club, which isn't a great sign, I suppose. And then he went to FC Basel, and he's part of the reason why Basel are struggling against relegation in Switzerland after being regular champions a few years ago. So there's not a lot of confidence in him necessarily, and I think it's quite helpful for Dortmund that it's the second home game in a row for Cologne because there was quite a bit of hype surrounding Schulz's debut, clean slate after the winter break and all that, and they played at home to Heidenheim, went ahead by a fairly decent Selke goal, and then there was basically nothing. They conceded the equalizer from Heidenheim, and the last 25-30 minutes there was basically not much happening. And considering that Cologne were at home against a side that is on paper at least comparable in terms of individual quality and all that, that was a bit disappointing for a lot of Köln supporters. As you said, they are second to last. I think they concluded the first half of the season with both 11 goals and 11 points, which, as one can quite easily tell, is a terrible result for half a season. And because of all the things we've mentioned, there's not much hope that things are going to get much better over the next 5 months. Right now, and I think ahead of the season when we did our predictions, I think we mentioned Cologne as a possible surprise relegation candidate, and I think right now the only thing that we have to strike from that is the surprising part, because Cologne looked definitely like one of the 2 or 3 worst sides in the Bundesliga, and
you have them in 10th. Myself and Matthias both have Cologne in 12th.
Yeah, but I said like from 10th to 17th or whatever, I could see anything. So
that's true.
So long to make a long answer.
But I also picked Dortmund first with my internal wisdom.
Yeah, that was
okay. That was just dumb.
Just to actually answer your final question, what can we expect from Dortmund? I mean, if they don't come away with 3 points here, then they are in deep trouble.
That is correct. That is very much correct. So, Matthias, obviously, the game in Darmstadt was successful result-wise, but footballing-wise, not so great. Do you think there are any things that Dortmund can change to the lineup to make improvements, or do you think the lineup that started against Darmstadt warrants another start, and you would hope that they build more chemistry, automatisms, all this nonsense as they progress in that game?
Well, I think one is if Mats Hummels is fit, he'll probably start. You would hope so, because that always helps Dortmund, especially in build-up.
Would that mean Emre Can as number 6 then instead of
probably? I would assume you'd move Can into that position, and then if you're gonna play 2 ahead of a 6, so 2 8s, yeah, you'd probably do a Sabitzer Brandt kind of thing. And on the wings, Dortmund have a lot of options now. I think it's still too early for Sancho at this point. Reus, I personally believe you should start Marco Reus in that match. And then
always likes to score against Cologne.
He does. And then I think Jamie Bino Gittens, I would start him ahead of Donny Malen right now, just because I think this could be the right kind of match for him. And then at striker, I think we didn't talk a lot about Youssoufa Moukoko, who, funnily enough, he got subbed in, and my son was like, "Oh, he's totally gonna score," and I'm like, "Okay," and then he did, and it wasn't quite JJ Okocha against, I think it was
Karlsruhe.
Was that Bayern? Karlsruhe, that's right. It was Oliver Kahn, but it was Karlsruhe. But there were a couple of moments, like I had some flashbacks there to my youth, and I'm like, whoa. And that was a really nice goal. And Youssoufa Moukoko did more in the few minutes he was on there than, in my opinion, Füllkrug did for most of the match. Füllkrug's been a little flat. He'll probably start because Terzic will start him. I honestly would love to see what Moukoko could do with more time, because I think that showed what he's capable of. And maybe you attack Köln with a little bit more pace than with Füllkrug up top. But odds are, you're probably the main change you'll probably see is Mats Hummels coming in and then Zaliha-Can going out would be my expectation, because Terzic isn't really one to make any major changes or revolutionary thought processes. Not that anything I said was major or revolutionary.
Yeah, I saw a lot of demands after that Moukoko goal for him to start from the beginning. I think the two largest pro arguments of Moukoko is that I think Niklas Füllkrug has a ceiling and Dortmund are not going to profit off him in any sort of way. Youssoufa Moukoko has at least the potential to become a breakout striker and really fill Dortmund's balance sheet. I know it's a very cynical way of looking at it, but this is how Dortmund's business model functions, and they need to develop young players to remain relevant financially, and so that is what needs to happen. So I do think that there should be more incentive to play Moukoko. Unfortunately, more often than not, he has also struggled with injury if he had a prolonged starting string, let's say. But the other incentive is, if it's Moukoko up front, at least I hope in my book, it means Dortmund have fewer incentives to just move the ball forward and need to find different solutions. But obviously, you don't know in reality whether they actually start playing all these long balls, and B, if they do they actually play well or just lose the ball in other position of the field, which then is more detrimental. So I don't know, but yeah, I'm actually kind of with you, Matthias. I too would play Moukoko just because I do feel like it's okay to mix things up. But that being said, Edin Terzic's approach is to have a strong hold-up striker up front and then play on from there. And I mean, with Sebastian Aller, it obviously works much better than with Niklas Füllkrug, but at least Füllkrug is doing a decent job overall, I would say, and he has had some good moments and nice touches, flick-ons, and etc. So it's not like he's completely useless in that regard, but if you have a youthful, exuberant attacking line, that's on paper just more exciting, but can of course go wrong. Lars, your thoughts on that starting lineup and the tweaks we just discussed? Would you play Moukoko right now instead of Füllkrug, or do you think this is we are all maybe not thinking straight after Moukoko got to pick apart a Darmstadt team that was super fatigued?
I mean, I don't know that Darmstadt were dead on their legs or whatever. I think we are kind of exaggerating a little bit when we talk about their...
I feel like they were.
Yeah, but not...
At least that was my impression.
But not in every single individual moment. I mean, it's not like someone turned the dials on is it EAFC 24 all the way to 0 for Darmstadt, and they couldn't run anymore. So I don't know.
That's exactly what happened.
I think I'm a bit surprised at how critical a lot of people are of Füllkrug. I think when you sign perhaps the leading goal scorer of last season, even if it's only been 16 goals, and I think 5 of those from the penalty spot, and also the starting striker from the German national team, maybe the expectations are a bit higher. But to be honest, I think he does enough things well that I would keep him in the starting lineup, especially considering how much time we spent talking about the build-up issues. I can understand your thought process, Stefan, in saying if you don't have a hold-up striker, you have to play out from the back and all that, but we just don't know that they are good enough at that. So I'd rather stick...
I feel like we do know that they're not, but continue.
I'd rather stick with what I think Füllkrug does best in the Dortmund shirt so far, which is play with the back to the goal, stick out your butt, hold-up play, maybe, those clutch moments, as we say, not clutch as in CLUTCH, but KLATSCH, which is like clap. So when a striker gets the ball and he immediately releases with one touch, that's clutch in German football lingo. And that's something he does quite well. He has those flicks with, the back heel and all that. So I think the 5 goals we already talked about, that's not a great, turnout for the starting striker of a team like Borussia Dortmund. But
how many assists does he have?
That's what I'm going to get at. He also got 5 assists in the Bundesliga, which is a very strong number for a striker whose ultimate job is scoring himself. So, the thing with Moukoko is that...
Do you have the number of pre-assists too?
No,
because I feel like there were a couple as well.
Don't care about that stuff.
I do.
Yeah, then you can look it up while I keep talking about why
I don't think I can.
Why I wouldn't start Moukoko. I think whenever he's gotten a chance to start, obviously it hasn't been the case much of late, but it kind of felt to me like he was forcing things a bit because he knew that it was a fairly rare chance. I think he does obviously do well off the bench quite a lot, but that might be because of energy levels, as you alluded to, and quite frankly, we know that Moukoko has an impact off the bench. I don't know that we can say the same thing about Füllkrug just from his striking profile. He doesn't strike me, as it were, as the top joker, to use another German football lingo terminology. I think Füllkrug off the bench, that doesn't ring a bell for me, so I would keep starting Füllkrug and just hope that maybe he needs the kind of game which they might have against Cologne, where a lot of things work in their way and he scores a double and things get easier, because quite the biggest problem right now to me isn't a lack of general quality or whatever. I think just the decision making for Füllkrug has been off, and it has been off for weeks. Quite a lot of times he's going for a hopeful shot from distance when he could have released a colleague with a through ball or whatever. And also he's been kind of unlucky because a lot of times when, for example, Bino Gittens or Malen break through, they have eyes for the goal and he's, sitting there waiting for a cutback pass, which would give him a great opportunity. So once again, to make things a bit more concise, start Füllkrug, bring Moukoko off the bench, and obviously Aller not in the picture because of AFCON.
Yes. Unfortunate, but I do want to see how Aller is doing at AFCON and whether he can get sort of in a form where he then will start for Dortmund eventually, because I personally really miss him in a good form, of course. If we could get Aller back in a better physical shape at some point this season, I think that would also turn things around quite a bit for Dortmund, just as it did last season, but not a guarantee, of course. Thank you for that discussion, because I'm very much intrigued about the tinkering right now, and we'll also see if Dortmund do improve in their build-up over the next couple of weeks, because between games currently they at least have time to train. So sometimes that can make a difference in terms of footballing development. I obviously don't know if Nuri Can and Sven Bender in that regard do have an impact. If we can expect a different course, different development, we'll see. Season is still very long, still a lot of games to go. And one way or another, Cologne have to be beaten. Matthias, any final thoughts before we knock it on the head?
Yeah, just the same one I had against Darmstadt. Don't screw it up, and you'll be fine.
All right. Thank you so much. Then everyone out there, I hope you have a fun weekend. Thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye.